Golden saxifrage is a plant of damp, shady places like woods or by the sides of streams. And it's almost moss-like in the way it grows, the stems creeping laterally and hugging the ground closely. Later in the year, it will be very difficult to distinguish it from the surrounding vegetation once the tree canopy closes over. But at this time of the year, it is producing its flowering stems, and they grow 10 to 15 centimetres above the ground, and at the tip of each flowering stem it forks and produces tight clusters of tiny flowers, 5 to 12 flowers in a cluster, almost impossible to make out the detail of without the use of a hand lens. And at this time of year, the flowers almost look like they have a golden fleck to them. It is the anthers in these flowers that are mainly responsible for that golden gleam. But we're going to need a hand lens or microscope to get close enough to see them properly, because each flower is no more than 4 millimeters across. There are 4 tooth-like sepals, each with a sort of hood that acts as an awning over the stamens when the flower opens. Petals are completely absent. And there are 8 stout stamens, 4 in front of the sepals, the others between those 4, attached to the edge of a flat central disc that glistens with nectar. These 2 little prongs that rise from the centre of the disc are the styles, with the prominent stigma at the end of each. The 2 ovaries are fused to form a single chamber under the rest of the flower, on which account it is described as inferior, simply because it is beneath the rest of the flower, where it is better protected. And this is an evolutionary shift that we find in many flowering plant families. The flowers are protogynous, so the stigmas are receptive before the anthers split to release their pollen. This facilitates cross-pollination, and although the anthers are on the same level as the stigmas, the short, stout filaments make contact difficult. But insect visitors will certainly transfer pollen between anthers and stigmas, so self-pollination is probably as likely as cross-pollination. Golden saxifrage is not a flower that appeals to the insects, the pollinating insects that catch our eyes. But remember that most insects are small, and golden saxifrage, with its tiny flowers that produce an abundance of nectar that is accessible even to the shortest of insect tongues, attracts an astonishing array of different kinds of insects. One early study back in 1872 found 46 different species of insects at the same time on one particular plant, including small flies belonging to 5 different families, several ants, small wasps and beetles, and even several small snails that had clearly been transferring pollen from the flowers to the stigmas of other flowers. There might not appear to be much to go around, but in times past, golden saxifrage was eaten as a spring salad, or lightly boiled and served with a little pepper, or eaten when nothing else was available. And it has a succulent crunch which goes particularly well with balsamic vinegar. It also had many medicinal uses in the past, but the one that intrigues me most was its widespread use for centuries as a cure for melancholia, as depression was known in those days. And what intrigues me is what possible connection was there between the plant and a condition such as depression. And I find myself wondering, could it have been these golden sparks that appear on this almost invisible plant at the end of winter, when the hope of spring and summer behind it lies ahead, and the idea that something of this could be transferred to a patient taking a tonic of golden saxifrage? And in fact, the scientific name for golden saxifrage anchors that ancient use of the plant. The scientific genus is Chrysosplenium, and chrysos in Greek means golden, splenium means pertaining to the spleen, because in early medicine it was thought that malfunctions of the spleen were the cause of depression. To be specific, it was believed that depression was caused by overproduction of a substance called black bile by the spleen. And the technical term for black bile was the Greek word melancholia. Melancholia in Greek means black bile. So after all that, maybe it's time for us to savour the succulent crunch of golden saxifrage for ourselves. Not forgetting, of course, that soupçon of balsamic vinegar.